Hey, math class. This is 5.2J, the composition of solids section, or as the teachers call it, the dreaded ice cream cone problem. No one likes this problem. It's definitely one of those that's going to like challenge you and make you think outside the box. You can totally do it, I promise. We just kind of have to take it one step at a time. So, oop, just dropped my pen. We got to start by thinking, okay, so if I don't have a formula for a shape and I want to know its volume, I must add the two shapes together. So I'm going to find their individual volumes, like pull them apart, and then add it back together to find the volume. Kind of like what we did with area and those weird shapes, kind of breaking them up into pieces, finding everything individually, and then whoop, adding it back together. Okay, so let's try it. This is the problem that they give you like in the other video. And then I'll give you one other one and hopefully it will be okay. I'm going to clear all my drawings so that I can scroll up. Okay, so in your workbook, and this is why it's important to have your workbook, you are going to find the area of a, just kidding, volume. I said the wrong word. I'm going to find the volume of a sphere formula and the volume of a cone, because that's what I have in my picture here, right? Here's the cone, and this is part of the sphere. It's actually only half of the sphere. We'll come back. Remember that half. We'll come back and talk about that later. But these are the two formulas that I'm going to like write down on my piece of paper so that when I get to this page, I can write them down again and kind of have have myself set up for success, right? Okay, so again, the sphere is going to be the volume of this is going to be 4/3 times pi times r cubed, okay? And then the cone over here, its volume is, I got to kind of move my Zoom screen around here. Oh, I've got it on here. I have to find, where did I write it on this piece of paper? 1/3 pi r squared h. I write them down. I don't have them memorized. These are not things you have to remember. That's why we have that page in our workbook, right? We have it as like a tool that we can refer back to. This is why we do that. This is why we have those tools. We got to use our resources wisely. Okay, so then I'm going to look at this and I'm going to start finding the pieces that I need to figure out how to solve this. So basically I need the height and the radius. And they've kind of given me information on both of those, but not entirely. So let me kind of break it up into pieces, right? So first of all, they've told me that this sphere is 4 foot across the sphere, across that's like kind of middle circle of it. This is a big ice cream cone. If it's 4 feet across, but we're going with it. Maybe it's not an ice cream cone in real life. Maybe it just looks like one. And so I know this is not the radius, it's the diameter. And then I remember from other things that the diameter equals to r, which means then that the radius equals the diameter divided by 2. Do you remember that? Hopefully you remember that. Hopefully that's not new information. So if my diameter divided by 2 will give me the radius, I just have to say what's 4 divided by 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So I'm going to go and write that over here. I'm going to have 2 cubed for the sphere and 2 squared for the cone. And then I got to figure out the height. Okay. Okay. This whole thing right here, this whole thing right here, whoop, that whole thing is the height. But that height includes like the top of the ice cream cone, right? So that's not going to help me because my cone really starts kind of like down here, right? So that's not helpful. I need this part. I don't need up here. I need this part. So, okay. I want to figure out what this part right here is because it's not going to be 10 feet. Well, I just figured out that the radius of this little dude, this sphere right here, is 2. And the nice thing about a circle is that if I start in the middle, my radius is the same all the way around, right? So it's 2 this way, it's 2 this way, but it's also 2 from here to there. So that's how I know that this part up here is 2 feet. So that must mean that this down here is 8 feet because the whole thing has to add up to 10. Okay, so I've just figured out, I'm going to change color for this. I probably should have changed color for the whole thing. Okay, so down here, this whole thing is going to be 8 feet for the whole part of the cone. So that means over here, my height is going to be 8. And then I've got pi, I've got 1/3. I think I've got all the information that I need, right? Okay. So now I can start solving. Okay. I'm going to start over here because this has 2 squared. And I just picked that out of, like, you can start either place. I'm just going to start over here because I know that 2 squared is 2 times 2, which is 4. 4 times 8, 4 times 8 is 32. These are my dots for multiplication, right? 32 times pi times 1/3. I don't really know if I want to times all of that yet. I'm going to leave it as like 32 pi. And then really what this means is that I like divide it by 3. So at this point, this is what my cone equals. Remember, I have to come back and add it to whatever my sphere equals, which I will. I'm going to leave all the messy math for like later. At this point, like that looks really neat and tidy. 32 pi divided by 3. I like it. You might even see it written as like 32 over 3 with the pi on the outside. They all mean the same thing. They're all equal. But let's go from here. So we've got this part, check mark. I'm going to come over here and do the sphere now. Okay, same thing. I got to cube out my exponent, right? Order of operations. 2 times 2 is 4 times 2 is 8 times pi times 4/3. So now I'm going to multiply, and weirdly, it's going to come out to be the same thing. I just took a little break because I was like, that's not right, right? But here's the thing. We have to remember, and I forgot. Thing that we want to remember is that I only need half of the sphere. So now I'm like going to divide this whole thing by 2 because I only need half of it. Because the other half is like down inside the cone. I don't want to count it twice, right? I only need half of this. So I'm going to divide it by 2. So 32 divided by 2 is 16 over 3 times pi. And then, so now I've got this for the sphere, and now I've got this for the cone. I'm going to add them together, right? Common denominator, they each have a 3 on the bottom. I'm going to do 16 plus 32, 16/3 plus 32/3. And that's how I get 48/3. And then they both had pi. So the pi just comes along. So after all of that, this right here is what I get, but that's not an answer, right? Because it says they want me to, oh, it actually doesn't say, it just says find the volume. You got to read your problem though, right? Because chances are when you do this on your own, it's going to say find it to like 3 decimal places or 4 decimal places, which means that we're going to take this and multiply it out using either the pi button on our calculator or 3.14. Okay. Give me just 1 second. I'm going to move everything up so we have just a little bit more room. Okay. So for this, I'm going to think about it and use my calculator. So write it down. Oh, I don't know if I can. I was going to try to like turn the screen off so you could see it up close. But I think we'll lose everything we have on the screen if we do that. I don't know if we're ready to do that quite yet. So I've just got my cell phone. I have an iPhone, but if you have an Android, it works the same way. If I hold it this way, I just have a normal calculator, right? But if I tip it, now I have a scientific calculator. And if you notice at the bottom, you have a pi button. It should be on the bottom on an Android phone too, but you can just find the pi button and let me walk you through how I type it into the computer, okay? Into the calculator. I'm going to start with that 48, right? I've got 48 there. I'm going to divide it by 3. So that gives me 16. Oh, look at that. 16 pi. That's going to be my answer. Isn't that interesting? Now I'm going to do that 16 times the pi button. And see, it tells me 3.141592 blah, 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 forever, right? And so that's going to tell me that my answer is 50.265. Whoa. I lost where I was on the screen. 5, 4, 8, 2, 4, blah, blah, blah. Forever, right? It goes on and on forever because pi is an unending number. Therefore, our answer will be unending, most likely. So here it is. I got, and so then it might say that it wants you to round to the nearest, let's say the nearest 100th or something, right? So that means I'm going to go way back in my math brain and think about how we did rounding. So tenths, hundredths, I want to round it to this place. Okay. Which means that I look at the one to the right of it. That is a 5, which means that this one is going to go up. So in this case, my answer will be 50.27. There is something else that might happen though, okay? Let me pick a different color. I'll come over here and do that over here because I could also use 3.14. So I could do 48 divide by 3 times 3.14. This is a multiplication dot. This is a decimal point. And I just want you to see what happens if I do that. And my answer is going to be just a little bit off. I'm still going to do that 48 divided by 3 first. And now I'm going to times it by 3.14. And then I get 50.24. So see, these are very, very close in answer. But because pi is unending, even though past that 0.14, like past this part right here, even when we go out past that, those are tiny, tiny fractional decimal numbers. They still make up a big deal. They still can impact your answer a lot. So the computer should be set up to use either way. WAMAP shouldn't count it as wrong. But if it does count it as wrong, let me know. I can go in and check and just make sure. But it should be able to count it either way. Okay. Sorry about that. A cough snuck up on me. Let's look at the kind of problem that they might give you, because sometimes in the examples, they give you kind of easy ones, right? And they don't And then they give you these super hard ones to work on. So let's look at another one that's maybe a bit more challenging. Share screen. Okay. And let me see if I can make it a bigger. Oh. Same thing, right? Same two formulas that I'm going to need. I'm going to need the cone, which is 1/3 times pi r squared h. And I'm going to need the sphere, which is 4/3 pi r cubed. Okay. Because it's the same shape. This one happens to be 26 centimeters across. And this one's nice because it only tells me how high. I don't have to do any subtraction. That's very nice. But it does only tell me the diameter. So diameter equals 26. I got to figure out. So radius from that is diameter divided by 2. So 26 divided by 2 is 13. This one's going to be a lot uglier. How dare they? But we can totally do this. So we're going to come over here. I'm going to say 13 squared right there. I'm going to say 13 cubed right here. I've got a 1/3. I've got a pi. Ooh, and then all I need now is this 18 because that is the height. Over here, have I got everything? Over here, I have everything. Okay, so now I am going to start doing the exponents. And again, if I turn my calculator sideways, it gives me a scientific calculator. And you might notice that there is an x to the x squared button and an x cubed button, x to the second and x to the third. So all I have to do for that is just type in 13. I'm going to hit the x squared button. That tells me that 13 squared is 169. I'm going to clear it out. I'm going to do 13 cubed now. That tells me 2,197. Whew, these are some big numbers. They gave us an example with like 4 and 8. And then now they're going to make us do 13 and 2,197. So rude. But like I said, we can totally do this. I'm going to fill in the other information that I have here. And so now let me finish out the cone one here. All right, so I have 169 times 18, which is 3,042 over 3, right? Can that divide by 3? Oh yeah, look at that. So that's going to give me 1,014 pi. There's the cone. Whew, those are some big, humongous numbers. Ew. Let's go on and do the sphere now. Okay. 2197 times 4, 2197 times 4. So this is going to be 8788 over 3 pi. Ooh, I wonder if that divides by 3. Well, not evenly. Oh, man. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 8788 divide by 3 and leave that big, long fractional number in there. Ooh, because what do we forget? I only need half of the sphere. Oh, I did that twice now. I'm going to take this whole thing and divide it by 2, right? Ah, I did that twice. Okay, that's okay. See, even teachers make mistakes. I'm just trying to be a good example for you. Okay, so if I divide this by 2, 4,394 over 3 pi. Ew, that's gross. Wait, is that right? Hold on. Yes, I checked it. That is correct, right? Because we only need half. So that's where that comes from. Because like the picture before, right? The other, like the bottom of my ice cream cone is down inside the volume, or the cone. The bottom of my ice cream sphere is down inside the cone. I don't want to count it twice. Okay, so here are my two amounts, right? Woo! Okay, so I'm going to take that 43.94 divided by 3. That gives me this ugly number, 1464.666666 forever. I'm going to add that to 1014, which is going to give me, I feel like I need a different color for our answer reveal. Okay, so this is going to give me 2,478.66 repeating pi. I really hope that you are with me still and you haven't given up, because this is our answer. We're in the home stretch, because all I have to do now is go either times 3.14, because I already have it in my calculator, which gives me, so if I did by 3.14, I end up with 7783.0133. Or if I come over here, and I did that, how did I get there? I did 4394 divide by 3 plus 1014, and I got this one right here. I got that number again, except now I'm going to times it, turn my phone by the pi button, and I end up with 7,786.960099. I ran out of room. Again. Okay. So what does this tell me? What does it say? Round the answer to 4 decimal places. Okay. Well, so I didn't include it over here. I put it over here though. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's gonna, like, this one is gonna make this one go up. So I end up with 7786.9610. So these should have both of these answers in the computer, or in WAMAP, to get correct. Because again, I mean, look how much different it was when I use the pi button. Even though those are tiny little fractional numbers, it's like 3 whole numbers more than if I only use 3.14. So kind of get it. Maybe my recommendation, I'm rethinking how to have you guys think about this. Maybe if you get to this point and you're pretty sure that this right here is the answer, do it times 3.14, type this in. If it says you're wrong, go back to this point, type in your pi button, and see if this answer is like correct or more correct according to WAMAP. And if you do all that and WAMAP still says that you're wrong, send me a text message, send me a quick email. I will look at it. And if you're really close, then yeah, we'll just give you the points for that. Sometimes WAMAP is really tricky and we have to like find our workarounds for it, but that's okay. Hopefully it'll give you some nicer numbers than 13 and 18. Hopefully it'll give you nice numbers like 2 and 4 or 2 and 8, like the first problem. Little tiny numbers that are nice and even, and maybe divide by 3. I will hope that for you. And if you ever have questions, because you've watched all of this, I've talked for a really long time, I feel like you've watched all of this and you're still getting the problem wrong, come to an office hour or let me know. Send me a text message and we can talk about it. I am here for you because you've got this. It's just one of those problems that has a lot of steps. And so deep cleansing breath, know that the teachers hate this problem too. And you too can find the volume of an ice cream cone.